Okay, hi everyone, welcome back to this video series on Windows Server 2012, creating virtual hard disks. To help you gain practice in creating virtual hard disks, the following 3 exercises will teach you how to create a differencing hard disk, how to clone any disk by creating a new disk, and how to configure a physical or pass-through disk to your virtual machine. First, in exercise 9.3, you will learn how to create a differencing virtual hard disk. Exercise 9.3, creating a differencing hard disk. 1. Open Hyper-V Manager. 2. In Hyper-V Manager on the Actions pane, choose New Hard Disk. 3. In the New Virtual Hard Disk wizard, click Next on the page before you begin. 4. At the Choose Disk Format screen, choose VHDX and click Next. The size of your VHDs depends on which format you choose. If you're going to have a VHD larger than 2040 GB, use VHDX. If your VHD is less than 2040 GB, then you should use VHD. 5. On the Choose Disk Type page, select Fixed Size and click Next. 6. On the Specify Name and Location page, enter the new name of the child disk. For example, new virtual hard disk.vhd. You can also modify the default location of the new VHD file if you want. Click Next to continue. 7. On the Configure Disk page, you need to specify the size of the VHD file. Choose a size based on your hard disk and click Next to continue. I used 60 GB as our test size. 8. On the Completing the New Virtual Hard Disk wizard page, verify that all settings are correct and click Finish to create the hard disk. The process to add a physical or pass-through disk to a virtual machine is quite different. For this, you first need to create the virtual machine and then you open the virtual machine settings to configure the physical disk. If you want to add a physical disk to a virtual machine, the physical disk must be set as offline in disk management as shown in figure 9.8. To access disk management, click the Windows key, choose Administrative Tools, Computer Management, expand storage in the left pane and click Disk Management. Managing virtual hard disks. Hyper-V also provides 2 tools to manage virtual hard disks: Inspect Disk and Edit Disk. These tools are available on the Actions pane in Hyper-V Manager. Inspect Disk. This provides you with the information about the virtual hard disk. It shows you not only the type of disk, but also information such as the maximum size for dynamically expanding disks and parent VHD for differencing disks. Edit Disk. This provides you with the Edit Virtual Hard Disk wizard, which you can use to compact, convert, expand, merge, and reconnect hard disks. Figure 9.9 shows you the wizard's option when you select a dynamically expanding disk. Table 9.5 provides you with an overview of what you can do with the wizard. Action Description Compact reduces the size of dynamically expanding or differencing disk by removing blank space from deleted files. Convert converts a dynamically expanding disk to a fixed disk space or vice versa. Expand increases the storage capacity of a dynamically expanding disk or a fixed virtual hard disk. Merge merges and changes from a differencing disk into either the parent disk or another disk. Applies to differencing disks only. Reconnect if a differencing disk no longer finds its referring parent disk, This option can reconnect the parent to the disk. Generation 1 versus Generation 2 VHDs. Previous versions of Hyper-V had some pretty major drawbacks. One big drawback was that Hyper-V could not boot a virtual machine from a virtual hard drive that was SCSI. Believe it or not, SCSI controllers were not even recognized by Hyper-V unless you install the integration services component. Another issue that the previous versions of Hyper-V had was the inability to copy files from the Hyper-V host to the virtual machines without the use of a network connection in the virtual machine. The old versions of Hyper-V prior to Windows Server 2012 or 2 are now considered Generation 1 versions. Why is it so important to know which generations of Hyper-V you should use or need to use? Hyper-V generations help determine what functionality and what virtual hardware you can use in your virtual machine. Windows Server 2012 or 2, Hyper-V now supports two different virtual machine generations, Generation 1, Generation 2, as already explained. Previous versions of Hyper-V are considered Generation 1, and this provides the same virtual hardware to the virtual machine as in the previous versions of Hyper-V. Generation 2 is now included with Windows Server 2012 or 2, and it provides new functionality on the virtual machines, including secure boot, which is enabled by default, the ability to boot from a SCSI virtual hard disk or boot from a SCSI virtual DVD, the ability to use a standard network adapter to PXE boot and unified extensible firmware interface UEFI firmware support. Generation 2 now gives you the ability to support UEFI firmware instead of BIOS-based firmware. So when you create VHDs in Windows Server 2012 or 2, one of your choices will be in the ability to create the VHDs as a Generation 1 or Generation 2 VHD. If you need the ability to have your VHDs run on older versions of Hyper-V, make them a Generation 1 VHD. If they are going to run only on Windows Server 2012 or 2, make your VHDs Generation 2 and take advantage of all the new features and functionality. Configuring virtual machines. The following sections cover the topics of creating and managing virtual machines, as well as how to back up and restore virtual machines using support such as import and export and snapshot. You'll also briefly look at Hyper-V's live migration feature, creating and managing virtual machines. It is important to learn how to create a virtual machine, how to change its configuration, and how to delete it. You will also take a look at the virtual machine connection tool and install the Hyper-V integration components onto a virtual machine. Virtual machines. Virtual machines define the child partitions in which you run operating system instances. Each virtual machine is separate and can communicate with the others only by using a virtual network. You can assign virtual hard drives, virtual networks, DVD drives, and other system components to it. A virtual machine is similar to an existing physical server, but it no longer runs on dedicated hardware. It shares the hardware of the host system with the other virtual machines that run on the host. Exercise 9.4 shows you how to create a new virtual machine. Create a new virtual machine. 1. Open Hyper-V. 2. In Hyper-V Manager on the Actions pane, choose New Virtual Machine. 3. In the New Virtual Machine wizard, click Next on the Before You Begin page. 4. On the Specify Name and Location page, give your virtual machine a name and change the default location of the virtual machine configuration files. Click Next to continue. 5. On the Assign Memory page, define how much of your computer's memory you want to assign to this virtual machine. Remember that once your virtual machine uses up all of your physical memory, it will start swapping to disk, thus reducing the performance of all virtual machines. Click Next to continue. 6. On the Configure Networking page, select the virtual network that you previously configured using Virtual Network Manager. Click Next to continue. 7. On the next page, you configure your virtual hard disk. You can create a new virtual hard disk, selecting an existing disk or choose to attach the hard disk later. Be aware that you can create only a dynamically expanding virtual disk. On this page, you cannot create a differentiating physical or fixed virtual hard disk there. However, if you created the virtual hard disk already, you can of course select it. Click Next to continue. 8. On the Installation Options page, you can select how you want to install your operating system. You have the option to install an operating system later, install the operating system from a boot, CD, DVD, ROM, where you can select a physical device or an image file, ISO file, install the operating system from a floppy disk, image, VHD file, or virtual boot floppy disk, or install an operating system from a network-based installation server. The last option will install a legacy network adapter to your virtual machine so that you can boot from the network adapter. Select Install an operating system later and then click Next. 9. On the Completing the New Virtual Machine Wizard Summary page, verify that all settings are correct. You also have the option to start the virtual machine immediately after creation. Click Next to create the virtual machine. 10. Repeat this process and create a few more virtual machines. 11. If you want to install an operating system on one of the VMs, start the VM, load a Windows Server 2012 or 2 installation disk into the DVD drive, and then under the media menu choose DVD and capture. Then just do a normal install. After completing exercise 9.4, you will have a virtual machine available in Hyper-V Manager. Initially, the state of the virtual machine will be off. Virtual machines can have the following states: off, starting, running, paused, and saved. You can change the state of a virtual machine in the Virtual Machines pane by right-clicking the virtual machine's name as shown in figure 9.10, or by using the Virtual Machine Connection window. Here is a list of some state options when the VM is running available for a virtual machine. Start, turn on the virtual machine. This is similar to pressing the power button when the machine is turned off. This option is available when your virtual machine is off or in saved state. Turn off the virtual machine. This is similar to pressing the power off button on the computer. This option is available when your virtual machine is in running, saved, or paused state. Shutdown. This option shuts down your operating system. You need to have Hyper-V integration components installed on the operating system. Otherwise, Hyper-V will not be able to shut down the system. Saved. The virtual machine is saved to disk in its current state. This option is available when your virtual machine is in running or pause state. Pause the current virtual machine, but do not save to disk. You can use this option to relate processor utilization quickly from this virtual machine to the boot system. Reset the virtual machine. This is like pressing the reset button on your computer. You will lose the current state and any unsaved data in the virtual machine. This option is available when your virtual machine is in running or paused state. Resume. When your virtual machine is paused, you can resume it and bring it online again. Changing configuration on an existing virtual machine. To change the configuration settings on an existing virtual machine, You right-click your virtual machine's name in the virtual machines pane in Hyper-V Manager and choose Settings. You can change settings such as memory allocation and hard drive configuration. All items that you can configure are described in the following list. Add hardware. Add devices to your virtual machine, namely a SCSI controller, a network adapter, or a legacy network adapter. A legacy network adapter is required if you want to perform a network-based installation of an operating system BIOS. This is the replacement of the virtual machine's BIOS. Because you can no longer enter the BIOS during setup, you need to configure it with this setting. You can turn numlock on or off and change the basic startup order of the device's memory. Change the amount of random access memory RAM allocated to the virtual machine processor. Change the number of logical processors this virtual machine can use, and define resource control to balance resources among virtual machines by using a relative weight. IDE Controller. Add, change, and remove devices from the IDE Controller. You can have hard drives or DVD drives as devices. Every IDE controller can have up to 2 devices attached, and by default, you have 2 IDE controllers available. Hard drive. Select a controller to attach to this device, as well as to specify the media to use with your virtual hard disk. The available options are virtual hard disk file with additional buttons labeled New, Edit, Inspect, and Browse that are explained in the virtual hard disk section, and physical hard disk. You can also remove the device here. DVD drive. Select a controller to attach to this device and specify the media to use with your virtual CD DVD drive. The available options are none. Image file, ISO image, and physical CD DVD drive connected to the host computer. You can also remove the device here. SCSI controller. Configure all hard drives that are connected to the SCSI controller. You can add up to 63 hard drives to each SCSI controller, and you can have multiple SCSI controllers available. Network adapter. Specify the configuration of the network adapter or remove it. You can also configure the virtual network and MAC address for each adapter and enable virtual LAN identification. COM1 and COM2. Configure the virtual COM port to communicate with the physical computer through a named pipe. You can have COM1 and COM2 available. Diskette. Specify a virtual floppy disk file to use. Name. Edit the name of the virtual machine and provide some notes about it. Integration services. Define what integration services are available to your virtual machine. Options are operating system shutdown, time synchronization, data exchange, heartbeat and backup, volume snapshot, snapshot file location. Define the default file location of your snapshot files. Snapshot paging location. This area allows you to set up a paging file for your virtual machine. Windows Server 2012 or 2 has a Hyper-V feature called Smart Paging. If you have a virtual machine that has a smaller amount of memory than what it needs for startup memory, when a virtual machine gets restarted, Hyper-V then needs additional memory to restart the virtual machine. Smart Paging is used to bridge the memory gap between minimum memory and startup memory. This allows your virtual machine to restart properly. Automatic start. Define what this virtual machine will do when the physical computer starts. Options are nothing. Automatically start if the service was running, and always start this virtual machine. You can also define a start delay here. Automatic stop. Define what this virtual machine will do when the physical computer shuts down. Options are save, state, turn off and shut down, deleting virtual machines. You can also delete virtual machines using Hyper-V Manager. This deletes all of the configuration files as shown in figure 9.11. Virtual machine connection. Similar to the virtual machine remote control VMRC client that was available with Virtual Server 2005 R2 and previous versions, Hyper-V comes with the virtual machine connection to connect to virtual machines that run on a local or remote server. You can use it to log onto the virtual machine and use your computer's mouse and keyboard to interact with the virtual machine. You can open virtual machine connection in Hyper-V Manager by double-clicking a virtual machine and by right-clicking a virtual machine and selecting Connect. If your virtual machine is turned off, you might see a window similar to the one in figure 9.12. Virtual machine connection not only provides you with the functionality similar to that of Hyper-V Manager, such as being able to change the state of a virtual machine, but it also provides you with additional features that are especially useful when you want to work with a virtual machine. File access settings or exit virtual machine connection. Change the state of a virtual machine and create or revert a snapshot. Additionally, you can have the options to send Control-Alt-Delete to your virtual machine and insert integration services setup disk. Context sensitive buttons provide quick access key to key features. These buttons are available under the menu bar to provide you with fast access to the most important features. As you can see in figure 9.13, it shows the connection of a running VM, but the VM has not had an operating system installed yet. So the figure shows the operating system Windows setup screen, NIC Teaming. NIC Teaming, also known as load balancing or failover LBFO, gives an administrator the ability to allow multiple network adapters on a system to be placed into a team independent hardware vendors. IHVs have required NIC Teaming, but until Windows Server 2012, NIC Teaming was not part of the Windows Server operating system. To be able to use NIC Teaming, the computer system must have at least one Ethernet adapter. If you want to provide fault protection, an administrator must have a minimum of 2 Ethernet adapters. One advantage of Windows Server 2012 R2 is that an administrator can set up 32 network adapters in an NIC team. Figure 9.13 virtual machine connection window showing a running Windows 2012 virtual machine. NIC teaming is a common practice when setting up virtualization. This is one way that you can have load balancing with Hyper-V. NIC Teaming gives an administrator the ability to allow a virtual machine to use virtual network adapters in Hyper-V. The advantage of using NIC Teaming in Hyper-V is that the administrator can use NIC Teaming to connect to more than one Hyper-V switch. This allows Hyper-V still to have connectivity even if the network adapter under the Hyper-V switch gets disconnected. An administrator can configure NIC Teaming in either Server, Manager or PowerShell. Storage quality of service. Windows Server 2012 R2 Hyper-V includes a new feature called Storage Quality of Service. QoS. Storage QoS allows a Hyper-V administrator to manage how virtual machines access storage throughput for virtual hard disks. Storage QoS gives an administrator the ability to guarantee that the storage throughput of a single VHD cannot adversely affect the performance of another VHD on the same host. It does this by giving administrators the ability to specify maximum and minimum I/O loads based on I/O operations per second IOPS for each virtual disk in your virtual machines. To configure storage QoS, you would set the maximum IOPS values or limits and set the minimum values or reserves on virtual hard disks for virtual machines. Installing Hyper-V integration components. Hyper-V integration components, also called integration services, are required to make your guest operating system hypervisor aware, similar to the VM editions that were part of Microsoft Virtual Server 2005. These components improve the performance of the guest operating system once they are installed. From an architectural perspective, virtual devices are redirected directly via the VM bus, thus quicker access to resources and devices is provided. If you do not install the Hyper-V integration components, the guest operating system uses emulation to communicate with the host's devices, which of course makes the guest operating system slower. Exercise 9.5 shows you how to install Hyper-V integration components on one of your virtual machines running Windows Server 2012. Exercise 9.5. Installing Hyper-V integration components. 1. Open Hyper-V Manager. 2. In Hyper-V Manager, in the Virtual Machines pane, right-click the virtual machine on which you want to install Hyper-V integration components and click Start. 3. Right-click the virtual machine again and click Connect. Meanwhile, your virtual machine should already be booting. 4. If you need to log into the operating system of your virtual machine, you should do so. 5. Once the Windows desktop appears, you need to select Insert Integration Services, set up disk from the Actions pane menu of your virtual machine connection window. Once the Hyper-V integration components are installed, you are asked to perform a reboot. After a reboot, Hyper-V integration components are installed on your operating system and you will be able to use them. Summary. Virtualization is quickly becoming a hot topic in information technology. The potential for consolidation is tremendous, and thus it'll become more and more important. After reading this chapter, you should have a good understanding of Hyper-V architecture and what is required to install Hyper-V. This section about installation and configuration covered various aspects of configuring the virtualization environment. You learned about the different types of virtual networks that are available, the options for installing the Hyper-V role, and the various types of virtual hard disks that you can use to optimize virtualization for your specific scenario. You also learned how to configure virtual machines using Hyper-V environment and how to create your own virtual data center on top of your Hyper-V machines. I showed you how to create and manage virtual machines, how to use virtual machine connection to control a virtual machine remotely, and how to install Hyper-V integration components. You also learned how to export and import virtual machines, as well as how to do snapshots of your virtual machine. If you have never worked with virtualization software before, the information in this chapter may have been completely new to you. You should now be well prepared to try Hyper-V in your own environment. So this is the last video for Windows Server 2012. Hope you really enjoyed it and found it interesting. So until the next time, have a good day.